today I'm going to talk about should you get a bike and when. I think when it comes to getting a good deal on a bike, timing is everything. Especially if it's your first bike, you don't want to buy new. You want to buy used. And the best time is always when there's less people buying. So if you're trying to get straight cheapest, in the middle of the winter, especially if you got, around here where there's like riding seasons, in the winter it's impossible to ride, and that's the best time to buy. The only issue with it though is you can't ride it home, so you gotta have a way to get it home. If you have like a pickup truck with some straps, then you're fine, you're gonna save a lot of money. But if you don't, that could turn into an issue, how you get it home. So then the best thing you could do is get it right at the end of riding season, right at the very end, when it's too cold to really ride and enjoy it, but it's not so cold that it's impossible. So maybe you could buy it and ride it home, and then it's gonna be cold, but it's not something that's impossible to do, So I think that's probably the best time. The only issue with that too is that then you have to just basically get storage for the winter, do whatever maintenance. But depends on what you think of that. Maybe it's better if you do it, because then you actually know that it's done. But if you want to avoid that, what you could do is buy also right at the very end of winter. Same thing, when it's cold and people don't really ride because it's too cold, but it's not so cold that it's freezing and it's completely impossible to do it. If you could ride by getting really bundled up, then there's not going to be that big of a market out for bikes. But I'd say you're probably more likely to get a deal at the end of the season rather than at the start. And then if you want to sell it, you sell it in the middle of the summer and you get a lot more than even, sometimes you could buy it. If you buy it in the winter, you can ride it and sell it in the summer, and sell it for more in the summer than you bought it for. So you actually won't even lose money. When you're figuring out the cost of a bike, it's important that I think the best way to do it is to figure it out by your insurance costs and add that to the depreciation losses. Like with this bike, my cost of having it, I got it, it's actually been exactly 1 year since I got it. I got it at the very start of the season, so I got a decent deal, not the greatest deal for it, but I mean, I just really wanted to get a bike at that moment. So the more discipline you have, the better deal you get, and I didn't have much of that discipline, but still it was a good deal. It's a great bike. But so what you think is, like, on a Ninja, for example, Ninja 250, you're not losing much. Like this bike, it depreciates, I'd say, at about $200 a month, a year. So that's pretty good. You're only really losing out $200 for having it, and then insurance is $100 for the whole year. Which I don't know if it's, I know other bikes are more expensive for insurance, but I mean, you can't get cheaper than that. I mean, it's liability only, that's why, but it's really cheap, so that's $300, and you add like registration or whatever, probably like another few bucks. Even though here in New Jersey, registration is much more expensive for a motorcycle than for a car. It's $70 Or for a car, it's like 30, 35 or something. So you add that cost, but you know, it's not very expensive, because when you, depending on what car you use, and the motorcycle, you can save up a lot in the fuel, and you can actually account for your total loss of having the bike. Like I like to ride to work. I avoid traffic, and it saves me money in how much gas I lose, and I save a lot of time. So when you think about it, going by car, I waste about a gallon each way. But this bike actually gets around 65 miles to the gallon. So when I go with my bike, I usually use 1 gallon going and coming back from work, which in the summer, when gas is at $4 a gallon, that comes out to $4 a day that I save. So if I do that, say 4 out of 5 days a week, because you know, one day it'll probably be raining or I just won't feel like it. So say it's 4 out of 5, which is pretty much what I do. That's $16 a week. Let's say it's 15, just to make it easier. And then 4 weeks out of the month, that's $60. So if you're riding, say, May, June, July, August, September, and probably October too, actually probably April too, so it's probably, let's say it's 6 months. 6 months at $60 is $360 that you would save just by commuting on a bike instead of taking your car. And so the cost really of having my bike, though, once you think registration, insurance, and depreciation, is actually exactly $360. So it comes out flat even. So just by doing that, you could excuse it. And then there's other ways that you save too, you know, like if you live around here, around New York, you definitely are saving, because in New York, parking's very hard and very expensive. Well, on a bike, you'll find that a lot of times you could park in little places where you don't have to pay, but it's impossible to find a spot, and you could squeeze into, you know, just little spots in between cars. And sometimes if you know somebody, you could just park on the sidewalk right next to their place, and then you don't even get a ticket. So that's always good. Sometimes I'll park it on the sidewalk just in random places. I've never gotten a ticket. I mean, but it's a risk though. So you could think of that when getting a bike. Look at its efficiency. Even if you get a 600 sport bike, that's pretty good and efficient. You know, Harleys aren't very efficient if you want to get that. But if your other car is like a pickup truck or something that's not very fuel efficient, even a Harley is it's a decent investment. I mean, it's not a total loss of money like a boat or something. It's you can usually try to break even or come up with some good excuses. If someone's, you know, saying you spend too much money, you could at least excuse it away with that. So like 600s, they usually get around 50 miles to the gallon, 50 some I think. So if your car gets 25, you're still getting double. And you have to do the equation really. How many miles do you have to ride at a given gas price? You don't need to use $4 a gallon. Probably $3.50 would be more accurate. And usually you're gonna break even, or you're not gonna lose that much, and it's worth it. After all, you're gonna get to have a bike. So when you think of it like that, it's not like you're spending $4,000 on a bike plus insurance and all that, and it's just money going down the drain. I mean, you're eventually gonna sell the bike, and if you buy at the right time, sell at the right time, it's not gonna be that big a loss. You know, you're probably get $3,000 after you sell that $4,000 bike a couple years later. And you know, it's worth it either way. But you're not even spending really $4,000. You're spending just a few hundred. I mean, take into account though that you don't crash it, because if you crash it and just wreck out or whatever, then obviously it's going to be a lot costlier. You can't resell it and all that. But I guess that will factor into your insurance, especially if you have an expensive bike. Maybe you want to get some good insurance to cover for that scenario. And always make sure you train yourself well. So having a bike doesn't end up costing you dearly, you know, you could get hurt, that type of stuff. Make sure also a good investment is investing in a good helmet and a good jacket and good gloves and maybe some boots, which I am not doing. And maybe some good riding pants. That'll be a good idea too. Make sure you minimize your chances of getting hurt. And some frame sliders for your bike too, those are good. They go on the side of it, and mine is not that nice, so I don't even have them. But if you have a nice bike though, so that if you drop it at you know, slow speeds from a stand, which I've almost done a few times myself, just because, you know, you put your foot in the wrong place and down goes the bike after you slip. So just make sure you do little things like that. Alright, so good luck guys.